Deepan, if you would go ahead and share your screen, please. All right, we have people that are joining online. We are going to give it another minute to allow people to join the webinar, and then we will go ahead and get started. All right, it's 1:02. We are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for attending Alpine's monthly webinar series. We are doing the sporting theme this year. So each month we tie our topic to a active sporting event, and we are doing the basketball theme for June. We're right in the stretch run of the NBA Finals. The WNBA is underway. So please strap in and let's get ready to roll. We will do our disclaimer at the beginning here. The information discussed in this session represents the views of the individuals and does not constitute legal advice or the views of Alpine. You should consult with your organization's leadership and legal counsel as needed for your specific situations. And if you have questions throughout the presentation, do use the controls at the bottom of the screen for Q&A and chat, and we will try and answer those questions as we move through the presentation. And it looks like we just made our first shot. All right, we have a poll that we will be putting in front of everybody. So if you could right now, please take a minute to fill in the 3 questions within the poll, and we will be reviewing these results at the end of the presentation. So we'll give everybody here a minute, and then we will jump right into the agenda. All right. Let's go to the agenda. I will be your moderator today. My name is Jim Chamberlain. I'm Senior Managing Director at Alpine Supply Chain Solutions. And our featured speaker today is Deepan Kasturi. Deepan is the data manager at Alpine, and he's going to walk you through how data really drives key solutions within your operation across different areas within your operation as you're looking to drive out waste and reduce your cost to operate. So data-driven decision-making, the parallels to the NBA season, there are many. It's a long season. In order to get to the finals, you need to focus and prepare for each game you play. Each game requires a different strategy and players understanding their roles. In order to successfully reach the finals of a project, you need to understand the data, its importance, its impact, and how to get it. So really, the way we look at it is data is the Michael Jordan of your team. And in this case, in your project, we all have different experiences within our operations. And if we only use that experience, we're likely to miss the real details that are going on within our operation. And usually there's always ahas when we do dive into the data regarding an operation. So applying the right data strategy will set the stage for a successful project and lead you to the championship. So our agenda today, Deepan is going to cover identifying the problem to be solved. So first and foremost, are you trying to improve your capacity within your facility, your cube utilization? Is it a productivity play? Are we looking to push more throughput through the facility? Are we looking to reduce labor cost? So whatever your goal is, it's key to establish that up front and then use your data to help drive the right solution to meet that particular goal that you're looking for. Also important, what does success look like? So once your project is implemented, what does success look like? How is it different than how you're currently operating your facility? You need to identify the data requirements, how to capture the required data. Many of us in our companies have tons of data, but it's spread throughout many different places. So being able to capture the correct data to be able to get one source of the truth when you're doing your analysis is very important. And we want to make sure too that we combine the data with the operational experience. Leading with data is key, and then being able to tap into the people that have the intangibles of the operation always leads to a very well-rounded solution. And finally, data will drive to the optimal solution. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Deepan, and he's going to run us through all the different ins and outs of data and how it can lead to a very successful project and very successful solutions.
Perfect. Thanks, Jim, for introduction and for going through the agenda. It was detailed. So I started at 30,000 feet level. So as Jim said, everyone in the warehouse or every customer will have a data, and they collect all the data, but they do not use it to perfection to get it to get to an optimal solution for any kind of projects that can improve your warehouse in the future. So what Alpine does is we get all the data that you have in your warehouse, or we will ask you to go ahead and collect some data based on the project type that you need and based on the problem that we're actually solving for you. And then based on that, we actually sort it based on the type and for the problem that you're actually solving, and then get it arranged, visually presented, and then explain that with a story to the customer so that you can understand your own problem and the way to resolve it. So that's at a higher level, right? So as Jim said, there are multiple problems that are available in the warehouse, and then we'll be going over the major constraints that most of the warehouses face in today's world. So square feet is one of the major impacts for any warehouses. So if you have a warehouse that's 1 million square feet, use that to perfection, right? So cube utilization and capacity is one of the major impacts of any warehouses out in the US. So always we're actually paying in square footage for any kind of a warehouse and not in terms of cubic volume. Why? Because you're only using the front space, which is the square footage, and not using any kind of vertical space, which will be our topic to discuss on this particular problem as well. So we'll go ahead and show you a couple of examples. So this is the worst possible scenario. So based on this picture that you see, every single item is in a floor location, and there is only air above those pallets. So above those products, there are no racking, nothing on top of it. All the space is being underutilized or being wasted. So which reduces the capacity at the same time, which reduces the cube utilization for any slot. So let's go to the little improved version, right? So we have utilized the vertical space to a maximum, but what I see is a couple of aisles that is actually creating more space. And at the same time, on the right hand side, if you see, looks like a same pallet, same kind of a SKU, with multiple pallets on hand. So it is not recommended if you have 100 pallets per SKU to put it in a single select location rather than invest in dense storage like a pushback or a drive-in in the future. So with that being said, we'll go over an example of what Alpine's project did for one of our particular customer. So we'd always start with the data and combine with the operational experience to provide a customer with an optimal solution for them to improve their problems. So as I said, start with the data. Inside the data, we always start with an ABC analysis. So ABC Pareto analysis always says 80-20 rule. So 80% of your pallet will come from obviously 20% of your SKUs. So that's not always consistent. So it differs from customer to customer and then business to business. For this type of a customer, we had 80% of your pallets comes from 14% of your SKUs. Sometimes it might be 30%, so it actually differs. So with that 14%, if you look at the full pallet equivalents, that's almost 130,000, right? So which is more than 300 pallets per SKU on an average. So Alpine went in and then did all the data analysis and then came up with a below table which says different kind of rack profiles. So the first three are in a single select. We have hand stack locations, which is a quarter pallet, half a pallet, and then full pallet single deep location as well. In addition to that, the customer was not exposed to any pushbacks or drive-ins. So we introduced them to pushbacks, which is a 4D pushback, and then a 4D drive-in and a 6D drive-in. So you might be wondering what is a 4D pushback or what is a 4D drive-in if you have never seen that. So we have upcoming slides that will also talk about that. So we have 50% of the SKUs that goes into a dense storage. Currently, previously they were actually storing in single selects, and we recommended pushbacks and then drive-ins. Right now, they're actually storing it efficiently, and they just went live a month before. So this is our customer's full layout, and you can see this is actually the fulfillment area up at the left corner, and then in the middle of the warehouse you should be able to see all the single select in green, and then we have pushbacks in the gray colors in the middle as well as on the right side, and then all the brown ones are the different kind of drive-ins that I talked about, the 4 deep, the 3 deep, and then the 6 deep drive-ins as well. So once we did it, then we actually thought we'd put a video of how a pushback and how a drive-in also works. So all the red highlighted area is completely full of drive-ins. It might be a 3 deep or it might be a 6 deep drive-in, but let's watch a video on how a drive-in works. So usually, similar to this, one full bay is actually only 48 inches wide. So you'll see, so this is only 48 inches wide, but it should be of the same SKU. It can be of any depth. It can be 3 deep or 4 deep or 6 deep, but it should be of the same depth. So the driver can drive into that particular racking, and you need the equipment to support that. And then you can place pallets on top of that. So it doesn't create any aisles, but it reduces the selectivity. But if you have hundreds of pallets of the same SKU, then drive-in would be a great option to go.
And deepen on, to add to that, one of the goals that you want to achieve in your facility is minimizing the non-revenue generating space. And when we showed all those aisles in the earlier pictures, that's non-revenue generating space. So to be able to pair the right items with the right storage types to maximize your density is a real win, and it can help you to stay within a smaller footprint by just doing the analysis up front.
Yep. And then one more thing that we talked about is having hundreds and hundreds of pallets of the same SKU would go into a drive-in. What if you have just 30 or 40 pallets per SKU? Because that's where most customers fall in. So if you have between 20 and 40 pallets per SKU, then pushback would be a great option. So even with pushback, we have 2D pushbacks, 3D pushbacks, 4, 5D pushbacks. So it depends upon the customer's availability and then what they actually need. So based on this, all these red highlighted is actually 4D pushback, and we'll see how the pushback actually works on this scenario. So you saw at drive-in, it was completely full of same SKU, but if it's a 6 deep drive-in like this, 4 across, 4 high, then you can have 16 different slots. So it's not necessarily one SKU, you can have 16 slots. And then whenever a put away person comes to place the first pallet, they'll place it on the first cart. And then for the second pallet, they'll push it through the pallet so that the first pallet goes out. So this is the second pallet, they'll just push it away. And then same thing for the next 1 or 2 pallets as well. So FIFO will not be maintained if you don't have a FIFO rule in your warehouse. This is one of the great options that you can actually work towards to maximize your dense storage. If you need FIFO, there is one more option instead of pushback. We can always suggest to go with pallet flow, but that creates 2 aisles. So there is always options that you can look for. So maximize your space and then increase your capacity within the building using dense storage options that are available. So that's one of the major problems that most of our customers have, and then most of the warehouses have, I would say. And then the next one is productivity. So productivity, in terms of productivity standpoint, we have picking productivity, packing productivity. So we have a couple of functions that are available in the warehouses, and each one has its own productivity, right? So based on the automation that you have inside each department, then it'll work on its own productivity nature. So we'll target about how to reduce your replenishment efficiency at the same time, increase your replenishment efficiency at the same time, how to increase your picking efficiency as well. So starting with pick and replenishment options, you have to properly size your pick storage types, and then you have to use correct methodologies to pick the products from the pick locations. So those are 2 that goes hand in hand. At the same time, if you have like really labor cost or really inefficient program on your pick and replenishment, always look for technology solutions that are available. And if you have a pick mod that is already up and running, then use efficient slotting to make sure that you're improving the pick productivity at the same time replenishment productivity. So for all these, we should need data which will drive the decision, and the major data sets are item attributes, meaning the item dimensions, the length, width, height, and then the case dimensions on the length, width, height basis, each per case. Those are the item dimensions that most of the customers have, but they're not using it to perfection. And then velocity data, right? So whenever you pick a product or whenever you do a replenishment, always capture that velocity information so that you can also turn that into useful format even in the future. So one customer might have standard 120 set of SKUs, while the other customer might have 100 SKUs, but that turn in all around in just 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So velocity data is one of the important factors as well. And finally, coming to the inventory data. So weekly inventory snapshots is what we are used to recommending to the customers, because if you have weekly inventory snapshots and if you're a 3PL, then you know what was on hand going back in time so that you can project your growth for the future as well. Same thing if you're a manufacturer, you can go back in time and identify how many weeks on hand that you had so that you can actually scale your growth for your future. So these are a couple of opportunities that we wanted to mention that you can improve inside the warehouse, inside the pick and replenishment options. So we'll target the pick first. So pick storage types, right? So one size doesn't fit all. So same thing with the reserve storage that we talked about. If it is all single select, one size doesn't fit every single SKU. So same thing on the pick type. So on the left side, you see all the bin shelvings for all the SKUs. And on the right side, all the case flows or the carton flows they used to call for all the SKUs. So there might be some SKUs that fit into a bin shelving. There are some SKUs that fit into a carton flow, but one size will never fit every single SKU. And then we'll show you an example of how we designed one of our customers' pick phasings. So the orange highlighted 3 bays are actually the carton flows for their A moving items. And then based on their velocity data, the item attributes, and then the inventory snapshot, we actually came up and said, now we are going to do 4 different type of pick phasings. And the first one that we decided to go with was case flow / carton flow, because you can pick, or you can have about 20 to 24 pick phasings in a 96-foot bay. Your pickers are not traveling so much. At the same time, the pick speed will not be affected by replenishment because the replenishment happens at the end rather than the bin shelving or the pallet flow. So with that being said, the second one that we want to cover is a very narrow aisle. So most of you might be familiar with a very narrow aisle, but I'll go ahead and state what a very narrow aisle is. So it just has a 5 or 6 feet aisle, but you have to use a wire guidance truck to go inside, and we do have a truck up there. So you do have to use that in order to go vertically above to have a pick facings. So this is an exact picture that we got from our customer. So you can see uh, the complete aisle is actually very narrow aisle with all bin shelvings, and we do have 7,500 items in just one aisle. So this is a medical industry, and the customer is actually working on a medical industry. They had about 14,000 SKUs. We were able to fit 55% of their SKUs in just one aisle. And these are all their C moving items. They do not have replenishment for these. So they used to do replenishment for the C items as well, because they were actually picking from the ground level. So we did the storage step analysis, and then we made sure on the layout, they're not doing any replenishments for the C items, since it is all in just one location. So we talked about the A's, we talked about the C's. So there is two more factors. So the one that we missed is the B items. So for the B items, what we decided to have is bin shelving. You can see the blue highlighted area, it's all bin shelving at the bottom. And then on the top, it's always hand stack and full pallet locations or half pallet locations for the reserve of the same bin shelving, or for the case flow reserve as well. In addition to that, normally we'll have the A SKUs, B SKUs, and C SKUs. Some customers will move more than, like some SKUs will move more than 100% or 200% than your A moving items. And that's when we put that as double A moving items. So the A SKUs were allocated a full pallet location. So we could have allocated into a case flow, but you would be touching all the cases so many times to replenish it. So instead, we decided to go with a pallet location so that you can just replenish a full pallet and then you pick it from the pallet itself. So by this way, our customer was able to reduce the replenishment by 36%. So before we did the storage type analysis, they were doing daily replenishment for their AA items, which we did once a week right now. And then they were doing once in 2-day replenishment for their A SKUs, once in 4-day for the Bs, and then once in a week for Cs. So the advantageous was once in a week for the AA movers because it is in a pallet location. Same thing for the A items because in the bigger case flow. And then same thing for the C items because it's bigger bin location. So they were used to be in a bin location, but it was small. We moved to a bigger bin location. And then for the C items, we actually eliminated all replenishments. So for 55% of the SKUs. So that actually drove the replenishment down by 36%, which was a huge benefit for them for the new facility.
And one thing I just wanted to add on here, Deepan, is that it's very important to look at all aspects of your operation when you're looking to do a storage type analysis, because you don't want to just focus on the pick and then have an increased amount of hours and replenishment and ends up being a wash. You have to really look at all aspects, the pick, the replenishment, how the product's going to be received and put away. All those are very important when you're looking to make improvements that are actually going to hit the bottom line.
Yep. All right, so this is just a quick example on the replenishment productivity improvement, right? So there is other case, which is the pick side. So this is another customer of Alpine. So this is a scenario from OptiSlot. So OptiSlot is a software that we leverage to use slotting and to perform the storage step analysis. So this is their pick mart for the each picking area for one of our customers located in Carroll Stream, Illinois. So on the left side, that's all the case flow and bin locations under the mezzanine. And then on the right side, those are the bin locations and pallet locations on top of the mezzanine. So based on this, what we did was you can see all the red highlighted items in the areas. Those are your top 20% moving items, right? So if you are a picker, you would always want to travel less. And with this scenario, they were actually traveling more because you can see the reds are actually located all across the warehouse. So Alpine went inside to perform slotting for the each pick area, and then we came up with a solution that actually improved their travel distance, at the same time improved, um, um, I would say, reduced picker costs. So all the red highlighted areas again is actually the most picked areas, but it's actually close to the pickers. So they had 23 zones, and at the same time 23 pickers separate for each zone. And then they had like conveyors in between, so pick zones and then zone routing, so on and so forth. So Alpine did a zone starting for them, and then we were able to reduce their picker travel time based on the solution that we're actually putting forward right now. So the benefits that came from this slotting project was reduce the travel time by 17%, and at the same time, the locations, multiple SKUs had multiple locations in their each pick module. We were able to consolidate into just one location with a bigger location, so that we were able to reduce the number of replenishments as well by 29%. So we moved some of the items from the bins to the case flow, and then from the case flow to the bins, which actually drove again the replenishment reduction, which was 29% overall. So we were successful in this particular project, and then the customer is actually seeing the benefits that is happening real time. So we are going to do a phase 2 for them, which is actually slotting of their case pick module. All right. So in addition to that, we talked about introducing technologies in your building, right? So what Alpine does, in addition to the storage depth analysis, we look into your auto profile, we look into your velocity and say, okay, you are well suitable for a goods to person technology. So we have a vertical lift module that we can evaluate. So vertical lift modules, as it is in the presentation, it actually goes up and down like a lift, and then it brings the tray to the picker. So obviously it's a goods to person, right? So the picker rates will be about 120, 150 lines per hour. On the flip side, you go to Cardex, OPEX, Perfect Pick, AutoStore, or Geek Plus. These are advanced technologies where you have maximizing your clear height, at the same time reducing your aisle spaces and improving your pick productivity. You might be doing 50 to 60 lines per hour right now in your building, and these kind of technologies will take you up to 300 or 325 lines per man hour. So it's almost like 4 to 5 times increase than your current performance, and at the same time there is investment, right? So we'll do a return on investment calculation. So we work with all these vendors. At the same time, we do have a couple more vendors that we did not add into the presentation because it had only 5. We were able to add only 5. So if we sign up, if the customer signs up for a storage depth analysis along with goods to person evaluation, this is what Alpine does. We go and evaluate their SKUs, and then the dimensions, their velocity, and then identify which vendor will be suitable for them. We will pick 3 or 4 vendors, and then we'll get the quotes from them, and then perform the return on investment so that you can actually go ahead and select one and improve your warehouse for the future. And then this is an example that we did for one of our customers located in Mansfield, Ohio. So we did 9 different alternatives, and you can see the first 4 are like different options with the same vendor, which was OPEX. And then the 5th alternative and 6th was 2 different options with AutoStore, and then alternative 7 and 8 with Geek Plus, same thing with the 9 as well. So some had a really good investment and a good return on investment as well. So alternative 7 had 33 months return on investment. In the case, cumulative cash flow, it's almost about $18 million in 2021. So if you're a CFO, or if you want to deal with a CFO, they'll always ask about the internal return rate, and at the same time cumulative cash flow, and then the ROI in terms of months. So this was summarized for one of the CFOs to look into all these options so that they can finalize, and then they can go ahead and make a purchase in 2023. And this ROI comparison was done for 2026, and that's highlighted in yellow. All right, so we did talk about the pick efficiency improvement, replenishment efficiency improvement, and then goods to person evaluation as well. So all these actually translates into efficiency improvements, right? So the first one that we would always suggest to have is the accurate item dimensions. So whenever you have an accurate item dimensions, the storage type analysis would be 100% accurate. At the same time, any project that you do, not only on the operation side, even on the system side, would be really useful so that you can reduce your put away person cost or receiving people cost as well. And at the same time, it also impacts the goods to person technology that we were talking about. So item attributes, it's one of the most important things. So with a good item attribute, you should be able to do cartonization, because nowadays people are actually picking the product and then bringing it to a pack station and then touching the product one more time to pack it. Instead, invest in cartonization so that you can pick it to the shippable tote itself. Same thing on the inline weigh check. If you have a right amount of data set by saying this SKU weighs this much, so that you don't need to do a quality check for each and every time for each and every order. And then print and apply, same thing. This actually reduces the number of packers in your warehouse. So we talked about picking, packing, replenishment, put away, all those different kind of stuff. And then with the right amount of data set, not only your pick, pack, ship improves, your receive and put away will also improve by having directed put away at the same time directed replenishment. And above and beyond, it goes into loading optimization as well. So it maxes out your trailer SKU so that you can optimally load the trailers in the future if you have the right amount of data set. So once that is done, then we'll be able to see the success of these kind of projects. So how does success look like when we do all these kind of improvements inside the warehouse? So it increases space utilization, which was the first problem that we looked into. It increases the productivity using an optimal storage type in a pick location or a reserve location, or using optimal slotting solutions. It increases throughput if you are investing in goods to person, or if you have a right amount of SKUs slotted in right location. So with all those, it also translates into all kind of reductions, which is reduction in damage. If you have a really heavy item that is located above 6 feet level that a picker cannot reach, that might cause a safety or a damage issue when bringing that product down. So what slotting does, it automatically slots all your heavy items in the golden zone, so that damage of the products will always goes in a reduction manner. And then obviously labor cost, all these actually translate into labor cost, which is the one efficient thing that we always run for. So with the labor cost, you should be able to reduce the fixed cost as well in the future. So we talked about two different things already, which is the storage step analysis and the slotting optimization that Alpine can do. In addition to that, we always do one more phase in between, which is called facility design and layout. So we take the storage step analysis result, put it in the layout format, and then do the slotting for the customer. So all three projects go hand in hand. So we have about 60% repeat business with most of our customers who do the STA project. So you can sign up on our website, or you can reach out to the phone number that is actually mentioned on the website.
And one thing to add to this, on top of what Deepan has already discussed, is there's crawl, walk, run versions of solutions. And the key is to make sure that you're implementing the solution that makes sense and is a match for your business. So some of these very high-tech solutions only make sense if you're trying to address really high labor operations where you've got a lot of manual labor going on, and the investment in these technologies can greatly offset them as you continue to grow your business. So that's one of the things that Alpine does, is that we work with you to get the correct solution. And as opposed to the shiny object, this looks like a really cool technology.
All right. The next one and final one that we want to go over is, we talked about all the improvements that we can make within the warehouse and in the data, and what kind of data is actually required to do all these projects efficiently. So the first one is the item master, meaning with all the item attributes that we talked about, that's the most important thing that you have to gather in your warehouse, because you might have 1,000 SKUs or you might have 1,000,000 SKUs. You would always need an item master to do that. And then the location master. So if you're doing an existing like a brownfield slotting, then we would always require a location master in order to understand what slot sizes are how much big so that we can do slotting efficiently. And then outbound shipment data, then the velocity data is otherwise called as outbound shipment data. And then we talk about inbound receipts data, which would obviously lead into the layout phase as well, making sure that your inbound staging lanes are appropriately sized. And then same thing for the outbound as well. And then weekly inventory snapshots, we talked about that. And then labor data, whenever we do a return on investment calculation, we take the labor data, we project it until the next 3 or 4 years on how it will look like. And then based on that, the ROI will fall appropriately. And then if you're a manufacturer or if you do any kitting process with your own building and a warehouse, then that's when bill of materials will come into play. So usually we take at least 1 year's worth of data from all these different data sets, and then we'll actually present it to the customer before going into the actual project so that you can understand that we are in the right path. And at the same time, we never say no to data. So you can actually give us more data if we have any, so that it will be helpful for us in the phases and any kind of a phase inside the project. And at the same time, if you have any missing information on all these kind of data sets, we are there to help you. If you have any missing information on the item dimensions, we can apply proxies. And at the same time, on the locations, we can visit the site, we can do a quick analysis on how your locations are and then apply proxies. So we are there to help you. So that's it from me. I will turn it over to Jim.
Right, thank you, Deep. And at this point, we want to show our poll results. Do you have one source to go to for all your data needs? A resounding no. So very interesting. I've seen this a lot in my history and working with companies, that lots of data, lots of places, but typically not one version of the truth. So very telling there. How would you rate your item master accuracy? So it looks like we had 76 to 99% accuracy, 80% of the respondents. And one respondent 0 to 25%. So we can kind of see that not only the ability to get the data, but then once you get it, the quality is kind of across the board. What percentage of your operational decisions are data driven? Between 76 and 99% is 80%, and then 0 to 25 where you're, it looks like, relying on experience. All right, next webinar is in August. So we are going to let everybody catch up on their vacations in July. And our August webinar is Tackle Your Supply Chain Challenges with the Right Project Manager. So it looks like a very interesting topic for August, and that is scheduled for August 17th at 1 p.m. Central Daylight Time. At this point, we would like to open it up to any questions that you may have before we wrap up the webinar. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your time. And you can also find this webinar on the Alpine website. Probably starting tomorrow, we'll have that posted if you know of folks that were unable to attend. Thank you all and have a great day.